Thank.
Yeah.
Nice to be here. And my name is Fredrik Hammargården. I am product owner of Indivd and co-founder. Even though we're just launching the platform now, we've been working with this for 5 years. It's been a research project for many years. So I'm going to go through it on a higher level and not get into too much details. But the problem we're working with is, oh, is that the first slide or second? No, that's the first slide, right? Yeah, so the problem we're working with is the physical space of retail. So this is something that's been iterated over and over and over for many years, that e-commerce is growing fast, and that's causing a lot of constraints on retail. So our view of it, one reason for their level of success is that they have a lot of data about visitors, about customers, and they can iterate that and improve efficiency, profitability, and strategies, etc. And the physical space, even though it's just two different channels, have big challenges. So their dominance is declining. This is not just the stores, but also the malls, also the city centers. Well, the physical space has challenges, and the lack of data is causing a lot of other issues that maybe not everybody is focusing on. But just not being able to answer these fairly normal questions in business operations means that you are lacking your opportunities to create profitable strategies, making investments, iterate solutions, improve efficiency, and knowing that, well, the way we work is actually working for us, and that changes we've done in the environments are actually improvements. At the moment, I mean, retailers are not risk averse. They invest heavily in digitalization and have been for a long time. But they're also taking huge risks when not having data beforehand and not evaluating the physical changes in the stores on a continuous basis. And the solution to that problem we are working with is a platform. And the platform is based on a technology which is an anonymization method for image data, which means that we can increase the level of insights for visitors and customers in retail in the retail space. It's in the foundation. It's a GDPR innovation or privacy innovation, and we've patented the method for gathering data. So before going on into details about the platform and the solution, the way we see it, it's not about the technology and it's not about the platform. It's about the way physical retailers and real estate actually operate. We see this as a way to change the way we're working, to make sure that we have data in the beginning that we can learn from, to be able to design or iterate new strategies and work with incremental improvements by tracking the changes and analyzing the results. And doing this, our mission for the platform is to enable retailers to do this as fast as possible and to make this wheel as big as possible and involve as many people as possible in the organization and also outside of the organization, because that's going to help us, because the future is fairly uncertain how to operate and what improvements actually makes the difference. But before talking about the data gathering is done by cameras. So we connect existing cameras in the locations with just a firewall. So we stream everything to the cloud, where we anonymize all image data and delete all image data without processing biometric data and store personal data, because that's one of the core features of Indivd, and that's privacy. So gathering data especially in the physical world, it's very complicated. That's why we have so much scarcity of data in the physical round. We have been working with these processes, the legal processes, for many, many, many years. I think we've been audited by 30 lawyers. Our latest audit was by the data protection authorities a year ago, no, more than a year ago. In Sweden it's called förhandssamråd, but that's something that we felt was necessary to make sure that we are compliant as compliant as possible. That's tricky as a startup to do. It's really, really, really tricky. And that's causing a lot of friction when it comes to innovations within privacy. There's not that many innovations that comes out of privacy, but we feel like we should do more there. And the core features of the system, it's designed by data protection by design, and some of the core features is that we never process biometric data at all. So we detect personal data on images, and then anonymize the data in real time. And then the end result is not personal data, it's just anonymous data, which we use to build insights. And some of the insights we can build is something like this: customer journeys. So customer journeys is something, it's an essential feature of online retailing, but it's something that's really complex to build when it comes to the physical space, because you have a lot of visitors and you have entry points, you have interaction stops, people passing by products, people passing by shelves. Some stores or some sectors of the retail industry has a higher level of conversion, like grocery stores. Most people don't go to grocery stores to click and collect, or most people don't go and think about what they maybe next week or next month should buy. But even though they have a high conversion rate, they have also big facilities. They are not sure that where they are placing the products is actually where the target group for those products are passing by or stopping or interacting with. And maybe a campaign area in the location should be just moved a couple of meters to the other side of because it would increase conversion just by exposing it to the right target group. Other retail sectors are even more complex. There are open spaces, not defined customer journeys, and exposure of products is important online too. So by just visualizing this and then being able to benchmark and compare from one location to another by using target groups like age and gender, is an easy way just to optimize the customer experience. Another thing is the dashboard we're building. So we as a research project, we were not sure what insights would actually create value. So we gave that task to a research company within retail to explore and to define what are the most valuable insights retailers actually need to increase profitability and efficiency. That also enabled us to be able to benchmark different technologies, and that was one of the foundations why we chose to use cameras instead of other technologies such as beacons and Wi-Fi, because cameras are. And we chose cameras because they provide us with the richest amount of data, which enables us to build the insights needed. And that study showed that the retail industry at the moment is lacking around 84% of the insights needed to increase efficiency. And that's good to have all that data and all those insights, because then you're also able to understand funnels and to target one space in this environment and correlate that with marketing. Like you do online marketing for a target group for a specific product, and we see how many people actually in that location or in those locations that are connected to that marketing campaign actually had those visits in that area in the store. How many stopped, how many passed, how many interacted, which enables us to work more strategically with the physical space. And when we have all that data, as for one company or for multiple companies, we could actually start building communities. There are already existing communities in the retail space, but they're not filled with data. So it's more intuitively. And what we see is that we could create communities based on data for a city center, like connect all the stores in one community, and they could then work together to increase relevance or increase efficiency or understand how good am I. I mean, maybe I could understand in my space that I have X amount of visitors per month, but is that good or bad? I have no idea. Is that what I should expect, or should I expect more? Is there a potential market in my close proximity that I should aim to target or build or add more products to better meet those that target group? At the moment, I have no idea. But public or private communities could be a solution for that. And another thing we're also looking at is the ecosystem around retailers, because retailers have a lot of issues, and they have never and will never solve that by themselves. They are reliant on vendors, on solution providers, to help them solve their challenges. So they bring in a consultant within design to redesign their customer experience. But those designers, even though many of them are certainly very good, they have even less data. So we rely on them to build a better customer experience, and they have even less knowledge about our target groups and our visitors, which is almost like moonshot projects, and we hope that they achieve high value, and we don't measure them afterwards, and we're not providing them with enough data in the beginning. So we see it as the marketplace where all the partners in the ecosystem could contribute and build new solutions and new experiences based on visitor data by just sharing that data for those locations for a period of time, and then exiting, either continue working or not. And by building a marketplace, we're also able to rate based on ROI to decrease the sourcing costs of acquiring new partners, and maybe even integrate new data sources to populate our data with those. We see a lot of business use cases ranging from supply chain to more profitable strategies, better ROI for digital marketing, or just optimize stores for local variations in the marketplace. Yeah, and that's me. Thank you.
Stay here, Fredrik. Thank you very much. I know we've heard a few comments throughout today already around how can you harness data, and it sounds like you're really helping retailers solve that problem, harnessing the data that actually exists physically that maybe they just didn't have the capabilities of doing. So it's one, obviously, real life problem that you're solving just on that level.
Yeah.
But maybe we could start with a question from the audience, and then we can go online. Are there any does anyone have a question here for Fredrik? There's one here from a gentleman.
Yes, so I imagine that you want a lot of data and you have physical items. How would you make sure that you have a reliable communication from the physical items to the cloud?
Do you mean product data?
Yeah, any physical item in the store.
how
So
we...
I'm going to repeat the question for online. So the question was, how do you take the physical data of items in the store to the cloud, and how can you then harness and interpret that?
Well, to increase accuracy and reliability in the data, we've built a lot of systems for that. One of the systems we built is, and that was just one part of the research project going forward, was that we built the largest, the world's largest 3D data environment to train our models on for physical retailers. So we have about, I think we're training on a billions of data of images from our point of view, which is the security camera model. So that's one of the projects we've had so far to increase reliability. Yeah.
Linus?
Yeah, so we really got the discussion going here again. First question, does this mean, like in the future when you're entering a store, that the experience will be delivered to you upon data? So will the genuine and spontaneous shopping experience disappear?
Well, if the target groups are not interested in it, yeah.
Yeah.
But if they are interested in it, the data will tell that it's efficient and profitable to have those experiences, and then we'll invest more in it. So it depends on the customers and the visitors.
So basically, if you're looking for a spontaneous and genuine retail experience, you will get one.
Yeah, what we hope to is for retailers then to pilot that experience, see if it's profitable, if it's efficient, and if it's needed. If it's needed, then hopefully they continue to invest in it, and if not, then well, it's probably going to disappear.
I see. There's also some other questions regarding the anonymity in this. So if you as an individual would like to stay anonymously towards the brand and don't want to share your data with them,
Yeah.
how will that work?
Well, that's the legal. We based our no, not we, but the store is basing the usage of the technology based on legitimate interest. And legitimate interest means that the need for data, that's something that's done in a balance test legally, but the need for data is higher than the integrity violation of anonymizing image data. So that's very brief. It took 3 years to come to that conclusion, but yeah.
Thank you.
Linus, I'm really sorry to do this, but I'm getting a sort of time check, and we're behind already, and we've got people who have heavy, busy schedules, and we're going to connect Fredrik with everyone, of course. Loads of questions. Let's hold on to those. We'll send them to you. Hopefully, we can find a way to answer them and share them. Thank you so much, Fredrik. You're here if anyone wants to hang around as well. Thank you again for sharing wonderful insights.
Yeah.
Okay, we have our next two speakers. They're going to come up individually, of course. Are going to also join the moderated panel discussion with Ather later. So we're going to reserve the Q&As and the questions for them till the end of that panel discussion. So our first, the next guest speaker that I'd like to invite to the stage is actually working at a company who's solving AI challenges for other enterprises. So often we hear about, it sounds so confusing to get started with AI. I need lots of data. How do I get started? This company is actually doing that, and it's a wonderful company, Swedish company, of course, that you can speak with, and if you want to kickstart some journey in AI. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Liliana Lindberg, who is an AI solutions engineer from Peltarion.
Yes.
Welcome to the stage, Liliana.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invite. So yes, my name is Liliana Lindberg, and I work as an AI solutions engineer at Peltarion. And for the past 2.5 years, I have been helping organizations that are coming with business challenges and trying to solve these business challenges with AI. The company, it is kind of like has a lot of experience working with deep neural networks because the two founders, they actually created the company 15 years ago when they met at university, and they started already working with deep learning before it was a hype. And from all their interactions with well-renowned companies doing consulting, they create a product that it was imitating the workflow that you actually today are following when creating AI-based products. In 2016, they have a big revamp of the product, and that's what we call like the newborn of Peltarion. They checked wanted to use the new technologies that were out there with cloud, with parallelization, with high computing processing to create the product that we have today. So from 2 people back in 2016, now we have grown to almost 100, mostly sitting here in Sweden and in Stockholm. And we are serving a good number of ecosystems worldwide. So for the past years, we are being in a mission. And our mission in Peltarion has been very clear from the beginning, and it is that we wanted to make this very transformative technology accessible and available to everyone. Because when you have that enablement, when everyone can have access to this technology, everyone is going to have equal opportunity. And the way how we are doing it at Peltarion is creating a platform that it really lowers the barrier that you need in investment and in the skills required to start using AI in your applications. We want to put AI in the hands of the people working with the data. And we can take care of all the complexities, all the management of the infrastructure, everything that it doesn't really have to do with the core business that you are working with. So in this journey that we have, we also meet a lot of companies. They are in different stages of the AI journey. Some of them are at the beginning in the awareness stage, maybe looking at the first key use cases where AI could be applied. Also, we meet companies that are already testing it. They have perhaps 1, 2 proof of concepts already in the testing stage, to the all other spectrum of companies that already have implemented models, AI models that are in production. They are part of the business, but they are looking at scalability, and looking at how to go 5 times faster or 10 times faster. Independent of where all these companies are coming from, meaning in the industry, the size of the companies, because we have discussions with small companies, startups, medium-sized, and also very renowned multinationals. The challenges that they are facing in any of those stages when you are using AI are very similar. And this is something that we can bring into the ecosystem to help the ones that are coming, so they don't take as longer to solve these challenges. So here, let's now start focusing to retail, because as I said, it is a lot of industry. It's a general purpose technology, so independent of what you're coming from, the tools at the way to solve it is really similar. What we have seen and in our engagements is that the retail industry, in my personal opinion, is very mature to leverage AI. What is delaying in some companies to start, or what is causing challenges in others, it really depends on the kind of priorities that these organizations have. But in my personal opinion, with those interactions, AI in retail has gone through several transformations already. They are ready to adjust. They are ready to use new technologies that it will make their business even more successful. So the next few minutes that I have, I will just to highlight some of the use cases that we had working. Actually, these are current projects that we are engaged to. And I'm going to start with personalization, because this one is kind of like one of the top 5 use cases that we see when we had our engagements. And of course, personalization, as someone mentioned already today, and it's really well known, it is nothing new. For this industry, getting to know what your customer wants, who your customer is, and being able to offer that product that they are looking for is being in the top in the agenda for many years. What is different today is that the customers are having higher expectations than before, that then when I'm coming to a different, in this one, if I just narrow down to e-commerce, if I'm going to come to a specific site looking for a product, I'm expecting that I can find my product quickly, that I can see what is, I can get the company or the e-commerce understands my profile and show me my results faster. I like to show this example that you see on the slide where if I'm looking for something, I don't want to see 5,000 results of my search. Show me the top 10 that you're really looking. And that's also something that some companies are looking for, at how to really personalize and become more specific of what the customer is looking, and avoid that they are moving and buying somewhere else because they are just one click away. So this is something that we are working a lot. You do the optimization of the personalization depending on what you need or what your customer needs. It will be in brand, it will be in quality, on price. Some examples that we usually throw out is like, if I have come in 1, 2, 3 times to the same place, I don't want to, and I'm buying for a kit, I want the site to remember that the size of my kit is 5, not 12 or 14. And this is some simple things that, for a customer experience perspective, it will bring a lot of value. So this one is also very common of the use cases that we work with, the visual product search. And here is when you revamp this intelligent search that goes from keyword search or metadata attached to your products to what is in the content of the image. And here is also something that we have seen it, we are working a lot. You can argue what similarity is for some people. Some people could be looking for a garment that it has the same shape, but some other ones will be looking for color, or someone will look for texture or patterns. So this one is something that we are working very quickly, very in engagements with different customers. And then one more area where we also have seen a lot of booming on use cases that now the retail industry is able to look is on the NLP, in the natural language processing. And the reason behind that is the recent advancements in algorithms and the AI community has done. It makes it much easier for systems to understand the language in a way that it wasn't possible before. So now it really is bringing value. So this is kind of it was really quick. It's just scratching the surface of some of the cases that we have been working, most of them in a demand, sales forecast, but also in the customer service spectrum is where I could say it is a big possibilities for retail to start implementing AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. I'm chomping at the bit to ask you questions, but I know we have time to do that because you're joining the panel.
Exactly.
So we'll see you then.
Later.
Thank you very
Exactly.
much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next thought leader, and a real thought leader as well on AI, is a guy who has a long background working with analytics. I mean, he's a data scientist at his core. He's worked with companies like Teradata. He was the head of the AI Foundation at H&M. And now he's advising all the cutting-edge companies on helping them solve AI challenges with his company, the AI Framework. So please welcome to the stage, Errol Kuhlmeister. Welcome, Errol.
Thank you so much. My name is Errol Kuhlmeister, and I'm going to be speaking about implementing AI in retail. I created the AI framework, basically because most of the things we do with AI in large enterprises, they fail. I think it's somewhere around 80% of the investment in AI are a complete waste. And I believe that there are clear blueprints and recipes to actually do this in a good way. But let me just start with a statement before we start deep diving into how to actually do this. This is a fundamental change in the society right now. AI is changing the game. But the problem isn't the change. The problem is actually adopting to the change itself. AI is just a new technology. And how we implement and use it and drive value from it, that's at the core of all of our discussions. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about some of the work I did working 3 years for H&M, a long-term relationship I just got out of. H&M doesn't need any big presentation. Everybody knows that H&M has had a very successful business models ever since they were started in the 40s. Extremely good at scaling up the physical retail store. But as a discussion we're having here today, talking about AI in general, talking about how the game field really is changing, we don't talk so much about the impact about this has had on the traditional companies yet. Fashion is going digital. We talked about it already around year 2000. H&M was really early on actually getting a web store. I think it was around year 2000. But that didn't really change the game field. The large corporations haven't really felt the pain yet. It wasn't really until 2015, 2016 that the real pain of digitalization became real for most companies. We've been speaking about AI since the 50s. We had winters, we had hypes, but it wasn't really until now that the technology picked up and we were able to act on it that it became real. So, one of the good things about talking about AI and talking about technology is honestly, do you really even need it? I heard somebody say you shouldn't focus too much on ROI. I am of the complete opposite opinion. You should only focus on ROI, because otherwise you will fail. You should not trust the hype saying everybody needs to do AI. No. Everybody needs to innovate. Everybody needs to find new ways of actually finding value. The questions you should ask yourself if you're listening into this is, do you even need AI? In my opinion, we're looking at 3 different things here. One is optimization of existing processes. One is innovation within existing processes. And the third one is business model innovation, where you're doing something completely new. Most companies mix these things up. So the big question you should ask yourself, should you even do AI? And if you don't know the answer to that question, the answer is probably no. But you need to drive real ROI in all of your investment, or have a strategy on when you're going to reach that investment. Because there are too many companies doing moonshots and then going bust. We need those moonshots as well, but they need to be well thought through, and there needs to be a process around it. The way you work implementing new things is more important than that you work on new things. Technology for the sake of technology isn't the purpose. We do these things because we are slowly changing the world. We need to invest in research, but we need to have a tangible path to implementing that and acting on it as well. If nobody's using the robots, then why are we building the robots? I am a strong believer that the new technology will change the world, but we need to make people to use it and see the benefits of it in a good, sustainable, and ethical way. So the first thing you need to do when you're assessing if you even should do AI is start looking on the value. What is the value with the type of things that you want to do? And this was one of the things we did at H&M. We looked on all the different initiatives in the organization. We put value on one axis and feasibility and speed to impact on the other axis. Because what we know is that if we're spending too much time in the lab focusing on the technology part, we don't get the value. And then people get restless and they're going to move on to the new thing. So incremental value delivery, feasibility and simplicity in the things that you're doing, not the most advanced things, was more important when we set AI up at H&M than anything else. Focusing on value created a clear differentiation. I've set up AI projects in a handful of different companies. I've advised in several others. Many of these projects have failed because I early on was a strong believer on we need to go perfect and then go to market. When I realized perfection is the enemy of done, then all of a sudden I started seeing investment getting ROI, so better return on investment on the things that I were doing. And all of a sudden, my funding started to increase to do even more things. Google even has published a blog saying, build easy infrastructure, build the most simple model you can do, and then iterate and improve. Value comes first, complexity comes later. The problem many people do is they jump straight into complexity. The AI hierarchy of needs is reflecting the Maslow hierarchy of needs. If you can't eat, should you go to the highest level against social acceptance? Most people will say, no, of course you need to eat first. You need safety. The same thing goes for your AI investment. Get the basics right. Get food on the table, and then start doing the more advanced things. Complexity for the sake of complexity isn't the purpose. But most organizations think that they need to hire a data scientist, and then they're all set. I've seen this over and over again. It's really about focusing on building capabilities instead. And building capabilities is creating a team of people that can deliver these things, working together with the business side and guiding them on what is possible. And making a company AI first, as Google put it, or data first, it's a maturity. You don't go from 0 to 1 in a day, but you need to build up a central capability and train the organization to get there. Because AI is no longer a competitive factor. It is a hygiene factor. And the small companies are eating the big companies' lunch. So you need to transform the company. So these days, AI and technology is more about transformation than technology and AI. And I have drifted away from the technology discussions. Early on in my career, I loved doing the use case presentations on how good the technology was. I really loved talking about the cool technologies, how you Dockerized, how you put it into production, how you followed up, what type of algorithms that you used. But these days, I don't. I rather talk about the way we work rather than what we work on, because that's more important. If you don't have the right tools, if you don't have the right processes, if you don't have the right setup, then you will fail. You can throw a lot of money on the problem and you'll get something out, but you will never be able to implement and become an AI-driven company unless you actually start transforming the company as well. And that's more than just talking about what AI can do. Then we're talking about transformation for real. And also, it's important to understand that just because you have a strategy in the beginning, how you're starting out, this is evolving all the time. Building an AI-driven organization is all about adopting, getting the right people in, having flexibility. It's not about setting up a research department in a large organization and then you're done. It's about constantly having a fluid team with core people, and then you'll have different stages. You're going to have one team when you're doing a proof of concept or a proof of value. You're going to increase that team when you actually go to production. And then you're going to have maintenance and constant improvement. And these are different roles and different type of profiles. So you need to change the team constantly, and you need to build up the skill level. You need to work with consultants. You need to train people in-house. And you constantly need to evolve. This is not a one-time shot that you're doing with AI. It's a transformation of companies. It's a transformation of markets. It's a transformation of the world. And it all boils down to creating a good culture. Many CEOs, CDOs, CIOs say we need to do AI. Okay? What is it that you really need to do? People say we need to have a strategy on how to implement AI. But I say culture eats strategy for breakfast. You need to create a good culture. You need to create a high-performance team culture. And that's not just about hiring the people with the best grades. That's not high performance. High performance is looking on the deliveries of the team, creating the right prerequisites for them. It's about giving people a purpose, giving them ownership. It's not just about AI. It's about transforming companies to adopting to the change of the market. And currently the change of the market is AI and data. But what comes next? That's what I'm thinking about now. AI and data, it's a hygiene factor. It's not a competitive edge today. So, I throw a lot of things at you, which probably some of you would say has nothing to do with AI. I say they have everything to do with AI. And I would like to summarize them a little bit. It's about value, not structure. It's about focusing on deliverables. It's about proving real value, not in the lab, but in production. It's having a team that matches the delivery setup that you want to have. Not just people with a PhD, even that helps a lot, but you want people that actually know how to roll things out. And also having a Moneyball approach to your team setup. Great teams is the key. Individuals are not. And also, technology is a small part. If algorithms is 10%, technology is 20%, then business transformation is going to be the large one. At H&M, we had several projects, flawless algorithms, close to production. Nobody wanted to use them. So the majority of the budget went to business adaptation instead. You can have the perfect product, but if nobody uses it, it's worthless. So what do we want to do? We want to go away from experienced leaders. Well, they should be experienced in leadership. We want to go away from expert leaders to data-driven decision-making at the front line, where the people working with the products take the decisions, not the people in the C-suites. Thank you.
Thank you, Errol. We can put this down here on the table. Stay there. We're moving well on time, and now we're entering into the next phase where we're going to have a nice moderated panel. It's going to be a melting pot of discussions of some of our previous speakers, but also some new ones, and we're going to have a Q&A at the end of that. This will also be a podcast, this next session, so it's going to be streamed later on, so look your best, sound smart, as you did. And yeah, so let's welcome to the stage Ather Gattami, who's going to moderate the panel. Welcome back Liliana from Peltarian. We also have Andrea Risberg from the AI Sustainability Center, and also from Microsoft, who's an analytics and AI specialist, Elena Tini. Welcome to the stage, everyone. Round of applause.
I can sit here.
Great.
Oh, good.
I guess you guys gonna be standing right there. So I don't think I need to introduce everyone here. I would like to introduce Elena Tini, who is a specialist at Microsoft, and Liliana is already one of the speakers. Errol is also one of the speakers, and then Andrea Risberg from the AI Sustainability Center. So welcome to this live podcast of AI-podden. So my name is Ather Gattami, and we have a panel discussion here that's part of the retail talks on AI event here at Epicenter in Stockholm, Sweden. So welcome everyone. It was great to hear your presentations, Liliana and Errol. And I would like to start with Liliana here. You mentioned that part of this stuff that you think is very important is how you personalize and work on the natural language processing. I guess you're referring to search, how you can search for products and get recommendations that are more related to really your specific search. Can you tell us more about the state today and how you can see it developing in the near future?
Indeed. So, as mentioned briefly earlier, something that we have seen at Peltarian when we are working with retail is that the amount of possibilities has been opening up with the new technologies that are coming out. So specifically on the natural language processing, when you are working with text, you have seen that now you are able to use systems that understands the context and the semantics of, for example, product descriptions when you are implementing advanced algorithms to put in front of the customer that product they are looking for. So some examples that we usually run along with our customers is that when you today need to have search based on keywords or metadata, or how do you describe a product, but if someone comes and doesn't write exactly search or words that are being used to find that product, they're not going to discover that new item. But the semantics that are now into the industry allows to find two products that have completely different description in the base of words, that they are matching products. And that's something that is very attractive. Also in the fact that the use of these big algorithm strains and a lot of data have reduced the need of annotation. So that is something, as well, someone mentioned earlier, annotation is one of these tasks that is very consuming, and it needs to allocate resources, but adopting these new technologies is also lowering the bar of how complex you can start your AI projects.
Thank you, Liliana. So, Elin, I would like to ask you about what kind of problems you look at Microsoft, especially if you could tell us a little bit about your efforts within the data analysis and supply chain part, which is actually a very hot topic today.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a hot topic that we talk a lot about with our customers, both supply chain and logistic flows. And with data analytics and AI, we can improve and enable logistic flows from a sustainability aspect as well, and reduce our environmental footprint, but also, of course, increase profitability and customer-centric approach.
Any other who would like to add to what Elin just mentioned?
On what they do in Microsoft?
No, just on logistics.
I can mention a little bit on logistics. Yes. We worked quite a lot on logistics and supply chain in general at H&M. I think minimizing the carbon footprint is a key factor, I mean, from a sustainability perspective as well, and also from a profitability perspective. I think this is a super hard question. I think your presentation, it's put the foot down. That is a hard problem. And I think in order for us to solve it, we need to be very clear on what is it that we want to solve, right? And then break this elephant down into more pieces. I don't think that one player will be able to solve it by themselves, but it has to be a cooperation by everything from the last mile delivery type of setup to the warehouse setup to the localization. It will require major effort from many players to actually solve it. Getting the right data points in, getting the right processing power to be able to do it, and actually implementing in different businesses. So
how did the journey look like at H&M? Did you guys look at the supply chain and how you could possibly use artificial intelligence to optimize it?
Yes, that was actually some of the first use cases. Optimizing the supply chain. I mean, H&M is fast fashion, so every kind of little bit you can shave it off actually goes to profitability. Supply chain in general starts with demand forecasting, right? So your planning cycles. All of that is AI driven at H&M today. I think it's around 90+ share of business, share of market that's algo driven today. But then of course all the way down to negotiating with the factories. So there is an AI algorithm driving the recommendations on what factories to work together with from an H&M perspective.
Cool, very interesting. So Andrea, we have probably not touched that much about the ethical part. Maybe Errol, you touched on that a little bit, but of course we cannot forget about how important it is to take it into account. So could you tell us a little bit what are the challenges within AI in retail that we could face, and how we could actually answer some of the questions?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And I think we've heard a lot of really good examples here today about how AI can really transform the retail industry and how it can create a lot of exponential value, essentially, both for business but also for customers. The other side of that coin is that AI is also something that can create a lot of negative implications. So with AI, there also comes a lot of ethical risks, and companies need to be aware of them. And I think Fredrik earlier spoke a lot about the privacy aspects. So privacy is obviously one of the larger risks that we're seeing in the retail space, but we're also seeing examples of bias being amplified and using various types of recommendation systems that really amplifies stereotypical behavior. So I'd say that privacy, discrimination, or social exclusion are quite typical risks in the retail industry. And when it comes to what the root causes of these types of risks, what they are, they can be many. At AI Sustainability Center, where I work, we work with clients on both strategy, so enabling them to use data and AI in a way that is ethical and sustainable, but we also give them the right processes and tools. And we usually work with 4 common pitfalls that essentially any organization working with data and AI can fall into. And we say that they are misuse of data or AI, so that you're using the data you have in a way that's not that wasn't the intention from the beginning, or that you're using the solution in a wrong way, or that your AI solution is immature, or that you have bias in your data sets. I think that's one of the more common root causes that people tend to talk about when we talk about having or amplifying stereotypes, say with recommendation systems. And the 4th one is systemic bias that any institution can have in their processes or their ways of working. So those are some common pitfalls to be mindful of. But the good part of it is that there are lots of things you can do. You just need to make sure that you're having the right processes and the right tools to avoid these pitfalls. Yeah, I can touch more on that, but I feel like I've spoken a lot now.
Great. So Elin, of course, Microsoft is one of the giants within the development of AI. I would like to hear a little bit more. So what future projects Microsoft is currently working on that could be very interesting within retail today?
Currently project that we're working on, it's to talk in general terms. I think that today we talk about retail, but I think we can see how different industries also can learn from each other. And some industries have come further when it comes to like AI or collecting data, or so to say, and some industries have not. So the synergy and like looking at each other and see what others do for inspiration, I think is really good, because a lot of happening out there, and it is that we have talked about today a lot, to have the right capabilities, but also of course have the culture for it, and also connected to responsible and ethics. AI, it's like the understanding, the knowledge that the customers need to be ready also for AI. We have all talked about it today, and transparency and so on.
You don't have any cool project at the moment that you would like to brag on?
No, actually not. Then it's just in general terms. But of course, we have a lot of cool stuff going on around the AI. And you can visit our customer stories site, of course.
They're actually humble. I've been to Redmond, and in Redmond they have a visitor center where there's so many cool things that they're doing. Everything from, I mean, the next generation of scan and pay. Sorry for taking over. But it was quite amazing. You go into Redmond, there's the Microsoft office there, and they kind of have everything on display. Everything from shipping lines. So I think Maersk is one of the companies I saw there, which is on public display. Then you have like brewery company that's doing everything, and a lot of different stores which are kind of digitally updating the prices as well in the store. So don't be humble.
One thing I can say, like, for example, we have talked about logistic as well, and if we look at Xbox, for example, we know technology, but we don't know logistics, but we can compensate that with AI. So that you can see different, with AI, solve different business problems. Maybe you aren't expert in one area, but you can compensate it with AI then.
Yeah, I would like to add into that point, because what I had seen also that AI being a general purpose technology, the way how you solve a problem in one industry will help to solve the same type of problem in different industry. And something that is becoming very interesting now that is being out there is the multimodal way to solve problems. So we are used to see at, okay, I have this problem and I want to solve it with computer vision. Now I have this text and I want to solve it with an NLP. But what happens when you start mixing these two things together and create something that is called multimodal? Now you start it limit that what is images, what is text, what is voice, or anything else. It starts becoming more diffuse and helping to get those insights that are needed. So it's a lot of things going on out there.
Thank you, Liliana. Errol, you have talked about how to help companies to be AI driven. So maybe a company like Microsoft, they have a lot of resources. What about companies that don't have this kind of resources? How would you recommend them to start?
It all boils down to size, right? So my focus has always been large enterprises. But even in large enterprises, you need to have a same type of setup. And it all boils down to the way you approach problems. And I like to say AI isn't a solution to everything. It's easy to throw around and call it something that will solve everything. But end of the day, it's about smaller companies need to understand what are we trying to solve. One way of doing it might potentially be to take in external consultants to support them, because hiring and finding these type of skills is extremely hard and expensive in the market right now. So I rather that most companies go back, do their homework, set their strategy, and say, okay, should we focus on optimization of existing processes? Should we use AI for that? Should we use AI for inventing a new business model? Should we reinvent our markets within retail or logistic or whatever it is? And then when they've done that, then start looking at, okay, what's the people strategy? What's the building strategy? What's the implementation strategy? It all boils down to traditional business logic. How do you get value from your investments? AI is no different. The only difference is AI has the potential to revolutionize the result.
Great. Now I have a completely different question to every one of you. And it starts with Liliana here. Could you recommend a book, a series, or a movie with AI in it?
Oh, wow. A book, a series, of a movie. I actually was looking, it's not that I work all the time, but I dedicated a few time to watching series. But I do remember I started watching a series on, I don't remember the name, but it was everything, how a society could look at, everything was in the fact of control by systems. I don't remember the name right now, but give me 1 second and I give it.
Okay, we move on to Errol,
yes,
and you get to think a little bit. Errol.
You gave me the opportunity to think a little bit before.
Oh, yeah.
So, one is the movie with Johnny Depp, Transcendent, when he goes in and becomes a computer. I think that's amazing. I think everybody should see that. The other part is a little bit more practical and isn't aimed at AI specifically. It's called Lean Analytics. It's an addition to Lean Startup, and it actually tells you how to work with data to start implementing your business, regardless if you're a large enterprise or if you're a small startup. I love that book.
Great. I like Transcendence also. Elin?
I can take a different answer. I think that all movies have some AI in them, in somehow. Maybe we don't see it, but it is there. So, or TV series or so to say. So I don't have a good answer as Errol, but that is my answer. So then I can say Gåsmamman. Love that series.
Great. Andrea?
Yeah, there's a really good book called Invisible Women, which is about the gender data gap. And essentially, it's a really thick book filled with case studies, research, examples of how a lot of aspects of our everyday lives and the way that we both interact with technology but also with physical elements around us is basically designed for one half of the population, for men. And the reason why that is because we don't have enough data on women. So we don't gather enough sex aggregated data. So we don't really know how different people might have different needs, essentially. It's a really good book. I really recommend it to everyone, especially if you're going to use AI.
Great recommendation. Liliana, have you managed to remember?
No, it's gone. I will get back to you on that one.
All right. Thank you, Liliana, Errol, Elin, and Andrea for this panel discussion and this live podcast at AI-podden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for today. Really good presentation and inspiring.
Thank you.
Maybe everyone could stay here because we have so many questions online. There might be some here. So, Lena, shall we do a Q&A for like 5-10 minutes and then we can wrap up?
Definitely, we have a bunch of super interesting questions. I'm going to start with you, some questions that came to you, Errol. You mentioned Maslow hierarchy. If self-actualization is the highest level in the Maslow's hierarchy, what do you see is the highest level and the end game in the AI hierarchy?
It's a good question. I would actually say the highest level is the algorithms themselves. That's what you do in the end. Before that, everything else comes. It's getting the technology in place, getting the data in place, that's the food for the algorithms, right? And then slowly working yourself to rule-based KPIs, and then you do algorithms. Of course, different use cases, different setup, but hopefully that's close enough.
It will be nothing behind algorithms.
Right. Get your house in order.
Exactly. You also mentioned a lot on focusing on ROI. Like in your work life, where have you seen the most output from AI in terms of ROI? Where have you seen AI do the most value for money?
I can't give you exact numbers, but I can give you sort of if you look on inefficient existing processes. So for instance, pricing is something that can be very complex in large organization. Just optimizing that for a very large retailer, not going to mention any names, can yield tremendous amount of results in ROI. That's why I always say for large companies that had a bit of legacy, start with something that actually generates a high ROI ASAP, because then you're going to get more funding to do all the other stuff. And then you're going to get more funding to doing the more advanced stuff as well. So focus on existing processes that are not optimal today.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to like more general question and have everyone engage. We have talked a lot about from a retailer's perspective today, but if we move into the consumer perspective, AI will be able to make decisions for us and give proper recommendations. Where do you think the line will happen? Like what decisions do we want to make ourselves, and what decisions don't we want to make ourselves?
I think that should be up to the user. So, from an ethical point of view, when we talk about privacy, when we talk about insights that we think are too private, we usually talk about data protection regulation, because that's meant to target those types of scenarios. So we have a regulation around that. You can talk about how effective or how efficient it is, but the fact is that there are sort of gray zones. Using AI, you're able to still be GDPR compliant, but you can still end up with insights that I, as a consumer, weren't aware of, that I was sort of giving up when I opted into sharing my data. Because it can really go beyond any normal humans' comprehension. So I think it's really important to put the users sort of in the driving seat and give them the opportunity to opt out. But I think it should be the other way around. You should opt in to in the beginning, and not just have it as a default that they're opting in.
Yeah, I agree. Do anyone else want to comment that?
I just have a one-liner. Be personal, not creepy. That's what we used to say like in 2015, before GDPR and all the ethics discussions really kind of loosened up. It's like, where do we draw the line? Yeah, when people start feeling creeped out by the things that you do, and that level is different for different people, then you've crossed the line. But it's super hard to understand when, so I think this opt-in situation is a much better setup.
Yeah, you can see that. We can move. We're talking about privacy and so on. With great power come great responsibilities, as you all know. And security and privacy is super important for where AI is heading. Do you see, and from your perspective, that the organization is taking this seriously, working towards both retailers but also other industries?
Maybe I can start because I work with this on a daily basis. I'd say yes, like spontaneously. The whole topic around AI ethics, which includes more aspects than just privacy, there's a lot of awareness around it. A lot of businesses are really starting to wake up to the fact that they need to work on this. A lot of the big tech companies have dedicated teams that work with these questions on a daily basis. Too few, I would say. But I think that's coming. That's a trend we're seeing. But we also have upcoming regulation around this. So there's a proposed EU act around the use of AI that's going to impact not only the retail sector, but all industries. So companies are really starting to go from awareness to actually operationalize AI ethics also. But that's the tricky part of it. Because there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of, say, high-level guidelines, what you should do, what you should avoid doing, but it's really difficult to sort of apply that in an operational setting. So what processes should you have? What competences should you have? What guardrails should you set? That's more difficult. So the way I see it is that companies, they want to work with this, but they don't know how. So instead, they work on a sort of ad hoc per product base, which could be sufficient in the short term, but it's never going to be sufficient in the long run. So what I would say to anyone, retailer or someone in another industry, is that make sure that you have a systematic approach, make sure that your organization has dedicated people who work on these issues, but also make sure that we have talked a little bit about culture, make sure that you're building awareness around ethics within that culture, so that everyone, not only your technical teams, are aware of these potential issues.
Yeah, do you see that that is happening, that organizations are actually putting in the effort, and do you see something that is lacking in that?
I'd say not enough. So far, it's not prioritized enough, and I think that's because most companies see this as regulation isn't enforced yet. It's going to come in, say, 2 to 3 years. So there's not really like a burning sensation that we need to do this right now. Slowly, companies are starting to adapt. I think the major companies, the big tech companies, but also the really data-driven ones, they are the ones taking the lead on this. But like generally, not enough. More needs to be done.
Maybe I've got a question just off the back of that, and maybe it's for all of you because you're all doing different things. It sounds like there's partly could also be that there's a knowledge gap. There's lots of specialists like yourselves who are working with this day in, day out. How can companies, irrespective of how big or small they are, how can they actually start to engage more with AI? Like, I assume it's an education process too. What are some of the things? I mean, you've got a podcast. Microsoft's out there talking to customers, but to be proactive, is it a case of they need to go and hire new people, or are there things that are taking place already, just here in Sweden, for example, around retail, like what we're doing today, where companies can actually engage all of their employees, perhaps? What are you seeing?
So my perspective on this is the ethical aspect to it, and I'd say what you can do, where you can start, is of course build awareness within your organization around these questions. Take in someone external. Maybe there's internal people that are really knowledgeable. Use those. Build awareness. Start having discussions. But also use tools that are out there. There are lots of tools for detecting risks, for managing ethical risks, but also for mitigating those. So look at what's out there and make sure that you're building that into your development process, I'd say.
So I work with quite many large corporations, different maturity levels. If you look on banking and finance, they take regulation seriously today. Well, they've always done. But it isn't really until it actually comes from somebody saying that this is serious in the real deal. I think the legislation we have is good, but it's not being enforced. It needs to be enforced because companies are not taking this seriously or they are uneducated in what they actually need to do. I still have dialogues with data scientists out there saying, give me all the data. I don't want to be able to go through these authorization controls. It's just hindering me. I can do everything. That's not how we do stuff. That's not legal. And we need governments to step in, and we need the authorities, and we need Datainspektionen here in Sweden to be very clear and follow up on these topics. Otherwise, they are going to prioritize other things that generates value. Because so far, if it's not being enforced, well, then they're not taking it seriously. And I think that goes for all. Most want to be compliant, but in a company, there are 100 different topics being pressed. They need to do this, they need to modernize the technology, they need to implement X, Y, and Z, and there's a limited amount of money. Why would they focus on these things if it's not top of the list? Nobody's even going to do an audit on us it's going to take 10 years. So let's focus on all the other stuff first.
Or if it's not perceived to strike at the core of the business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to take it more seriously.
Yeah, and I would like to throw out another question. Looking at retailers, do you see anyone that is best in class when it comes to working with AI? Someone?
H&M.
Of course, but other than that?
Well, I have to say at least Zara works great with the data, although they have an advantage compared actually to H&M and other companies, which is they have their own factories and they're very close. For instance, in Europe, they really manufacture from factory to store. It's about 2 days because their factory is in Turkey. And what they do is that they look at the data, they look at what sells very well, and actually they change their products very quickly. So if you have bought a shirt, maybe there is a very popular shirt, then it goes out of stock, you will never see it in store again. But we can see a variation that it also gets popular. So they work with data, logistics optimization, the designers get inspired all the time from the data. They see what works and what doesn't. And I'm not sure if it's really machine learning, but because it's really started very early. But they are really one of the companies that have optimized the entire chain extremely well, definitely based on data. I don't know really what's behind it, if it's AI or not.
Sounds like AI.
I think we have room for another question.
Okay, last question then. Let's pick a good one. AI can automate and help to automate a lot of different processes. What do you see will be the last one left? What will be the last thing that AI actually will be able to help make more efficient?
I will say,
tough question.
yeah, it is a tough question, but I always have related this as the last thing that AI could be able to do better than humans. It is in the sense when you need to show empathy, things that really make us humans. I think that for more than you have the data or you kind to train a machine, you're never going to excel at how we humans act as humans. So I think empathy will be one of them. So all these professionals that you involved, you care for your patients, and you care for children at school, that type of...
So being human.
Being human, exactly.
It's almost scary. I think that's an entire another event that we can talk about empathy and where the world's going on AI. I'm conscious that people have dedicated 2 hours of their time for us today. They've got busy schedules, there's meetings and there's business to be done. So we're going to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you to all of our guest speakers, those on stage and those who were here before us. Thank you for sharing your insights, the things you're working with. My mind's exploding with ideas from my own company now. Thank you. So a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
And before people just start logging off online, just the last 10 seconds, we'll say we're going to connect with all of you. We're going to share this the link to this stream. There'll be the podcast that will go up online. We'll try to capture as many questions and share details. Would that be okay that we share contact details? Because I think there is a bunch of questions and people want to connect and do business and get some help. So thank you to everyone online who logged in. Thank you for everyone here in person. We will see you next time, and the follow-up email will come out either today or tomorrow. Thank you once again.